In the quiet town of Riverton, where the river wound lazily through maple-lined streets and the air always carried a hint of blooming jasmine in spring, Margaret Harper had built a life out of quiet endurance. At 58, she was a woman whose hands bore the faint scars of years spent scrubbing floors, folding linens, and piecing together a family after loss had torn it apart. Her auburn hair, now threaded with silver, framed a face etched with lines that spoke not of defeat, but of resilience. Margaret wasn't one for dramatics. She preferred the steady rhythm of routine. The early morning coffee on her porch, the volunteer shifts at the community garden, the way the sun filtered through her kitchen curtains at dawn. But beneath that calm exterior lay a heart that had mended slowly, stitch by careful stitch, after the sudden death of her husband, Thomas, 18 years earlier. Thomas had been her anchor. A high school teacher with a laugh that filled rooms and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he teased her about her legendary apple pie. His heart attack came without warning, on a crisp autumn evening while raking leaves in their backyard. One moment he was there, humming an old folk tune. The next he was gone, leaving Margaret with a mortgage, 2 teenagers on the cusp of adulthood, and a grief so profound it felt like drowning. Jonathan was 17 then. A lanky boy with his father's dark hair and a quick wit that masked his insecurities. Emily was 15, all sharp elbows and dreams of escaping small-town life, her mother's determination shining through in her fierce debates at the dinner table. Margaret had done what she always did. She rolled up her sleeves. By day, she managed the front desk at a local accounting firm, her voice steady as she scheduled appointments and balanced ledgers. By night, she cleaned offices in the city, the hum of the vacuum a lullaby that drowned out the silence of an empty bed. Money was tight, but Margaret made it work. She scrimped on groceries, mended clothes until they frayed beyond repair, and poured every spare penny into her children's futures. Jonathan went to college on scholarships and loans she co-signed, emerging with a business degree and ambitions that outpaced his opportunities. Emily followed, studying graphic design, her portfolio brimming with talent, but her heart set on a life far from Riverton. Margaret attended every graduation, every milestone, her pride a quiet flame that warmed her through the long, lonely nights. As the years passed, the children drifted. Jonathan landed a job in real estate, climbing the ladder with a charisma that charmed clients but left little room for family calls. He met Lauren in a boardroom, blonde, ambitious, the daughter of a prominent developer, and married her in a lavish ceremony that Margaret helped fund with a gift from her savings. Emily found Derek at an art gallery opening. A tech was with big ideas and bigger egos, and their wedding was a whirlwind of Instagram-worthy moments that Margaret attended alone, her chair next to Clara, her oldest friend, who squeezed her hand and whispered, "They're happy, Maggie. That's what matters." But happiness, Margaret learned, was a fragile thing. Jonathan and Lauren's life became a parade of luxury. The $1.8 million colonial in the suburbs, leased Porsches in the driveway, weekends in the Hamptons. Emily and Derek mirrored them. A sleek condo downtown, venture capital pitches that promised the world. Visits home grew rare. Birthdays marked by e-cards rather than cakes. And when Margaret needed help, a leaky roof, a medical bill after a fall, her requests were met with excuses or worse, IOUs that lingered like unpaid debts. Still, she loved them. Fiercely, unconditionally. It was that love that had sustained her through the widowhood, the empty nest, the ache of Christmases spent with flickering TV lights for company. It was that love that made her say yes when Robert Ellison, Bob, asked her to coffee after a rainy afternoon at the garden. Bob was a gentle giant of a man, 62, with salt and pepper hair cropped short and hands that could fashion a birdhouse from scrap wood or fix a flat tire without a curse word. Widowed 5 years after losing his wife, Sarah, to a long illness, he had retreated into solitude, tending his small bungalow on Elm Street and volunteering where he could. They bonded over heirloom tomatoes and stories of lost loves. Their conversations easy, unhurried. Bob never pressed. He listened. And in his quiet strength, Margaret found a spark she thought had died with Thomas. 2 years later, under a canopy of stars at the garden's annual Harvest Festival, Bob proposed with a ring he'd carved himself from oak, a simple band etched with intertwined vines. Margaret said yes without hesitation. This was her second chance, she told herself. A quiet, beautiful life with a man who saw her, truly saw her. To celebrate, she planned a wedding worthy of the joy blooming in her chest. For 100 guests. Old friends from the firm, neighbors who'd shared block parties, distant cousins, even Jonathan and Emily's families. The Grand Magnolia Hotel, with its river views and ballrooms that whispered of old Southern elegance. She dipped into her savings, the nest egg she'd built from overtime and frugality, hiring a string quartet, a caterer renowned for her urban-fused dishes, florists who wove magic from white roses and eucalyptus. It wasn't ostentation, it was intention. After years of sacrifice, Margaret deserved one day unmarred by worry. As the date approached, invitations went out on cream stock with gold embossing. RSVPs flooded in, a tide of well wishes. Jonathan called once, his voice clipped. "Mom, this Bob guy, he's solid, right? Lauren thinks we should vet him." Margaret laughed it off. Emily texted heart emojis but no details on travel plans. Clara, ever the rock, helped with fittings and playlists, her husband, Tom, promising to walk Margaret down the aisle. The night before, Margaret lay awake, her mind a whirl of what-ifs. What if the weather turned? What if the cake collapsed? What if, in the quiet aftermath, the emptiness returned? Bob's voice on the phone soothed her. "Tomorrow, Maggie, we start our story. Just you and me." She fell asleep to dreams of rivers flowing endlessly, carrying away the shadows of the past. The bridal suite at the Grand Magnolia was a sanctuary of soft light and fresh blooms. Sunlight slanted through lace-curtained windows, casting patterns on the hardwood floor like scattered confetti. Margaret stood before the full-length mirror, her reflection a blend of nerves and quiet resolve. The ivory silk gown hugged her frame gently, its A-line skirt pooling at her feet in a whisper of fabric. The veil, delicate as spider silk, framed her face, catching the light in her hazel eyes. Eyes that had seen too much loss but now held a tentative sparkle. She turned slightly, admiring the pearl buttons that marched up the back like tiny soldiers. The dress had cost more than a month's rent, but it felt right, timeless, not trendy. No plunging neckline or mermaid silhouette, just elegance born of experience. Her hair, swept into a loose chignon, was adorned with a single gardenia, its creamy petals releasing a sweet, heady scent that mingled with the room's bouquet of white roses. Downstairs, the ballroom hummed with anticipation. 400 chairs upholstered in ivory velvet flanked an aisle lined with flickering lanterns and petals in shades of blush and cream. Tables groaned under centerpieces of cascading lilies and roses, gold-rimmed china gleaming beside crystal flutes. The string quartet tuned their instruments, notes floating like butterflies. Caterers darted about, arranging amuse-bouches of smoked salmon and caviar blinis, while the bartender polished glasses for the open bar, Margaret's one indulgence, ensuring every guest felt the warmth of her hospitality. She had planned it all meticulously. The menu reflected her tastes. Herb-crusted rack of lamb for the main, heirloom tomato salad to honor the garden where she'd met Bob, apple tart for dessert, a nod to Thomas, whose recipe she'd perfected over decades. The photographer, a soft-spoken woman named Lena, captured candids, guests arriving in sundresses and seersucker suits, laughter bubbling as old friends reunited. Clara bustled in, her own dress a soft lavender that complemented Margaret's ivory. At 60, Clara was a whirlwind of energy, her short bob dyed a defiant red, her eyes sharp behind cat-eye glasses. "Maggie, you look like a dream. Bob's not going to know what hit him." Margaret smiled, but her fingers twisted the veil's edge. "What if it's too much? The money, I drained the account. What if?" Clara cut her off with a hug. "Stop. This isn't about the dollars, it's about the joy. You've earned this. Every penny, every late night. Now let's get you downstairs before Tom starts pacing like a caged lion." A soft knock echoed. It was Lena, the photographer. "Mrs. Harper? The guests are seated. Just a few shots here first." Margaret nodded, posing by the window, veil lifted like wings. Click. By the bouquet. Click. Alone, then with Clara, their arms linked in solidarity. As Lena worked, Margaret's mind wandered to the empty chairs she'd noticed in the seating chart. Jonathan's table was full. Lauren, her parents Richard and Evelyn, brothers Mark and Todd with their wives, but something felt off. Emily had confirmed attendance, but her texts had been curt lately. No matter. They would be there. They had to be. The suite door opened again, admitting Tom, Clara's husband, in a crisp navy suit that strained slightly at his belly. "Ready, kiddo?" His voice was gruff, but his eyes misted. Thomas's brother, Uncle Ray, had bowed out due to health, so Tom stepped in. A quiet honor that meant the world. "As I'll ever be," Margaret replied, linking her arm through his. One last glance in the mirror. Cheeks flushed, lips tinted rose, heart pounding like a war drum. She stepped into the hall, the carpet muffling her heels, the air thick with the promise of forever. Down the grand staircase, the lobby blurred. Guests murmuring, flowers nodding in the breeze from open doors. Outside, the river glittered under the late afternoon sun, a ribbon of gold threading the green valley. The ceremony tent, white gauze billowing gently, awaited. Margaret paused at the threshold, Tom's hand steady on hers. "Breathe," she told herself. "This is your day." The quartet struck up Pachelbel's canon, strings weaving magic through the air. Guests rose, a sea of faces smiling, neighbors like Mrs. Patel from the garden, former colleagues from the firm, cousins from Atlanta she'd not seen in years. And there in the front row, Clara and Tom taking their seats. Bob stood at the altar, tall and steady in his gray suit, its fabric simple wool from a local tailor. His tie was the color of river blue, a pocket square folded neatly. His eyes found hers across the distance, and in that gaze Margaret saw her future. Not grand but true. Tom led her down the aisle, petals crunching softly underfoot. Each step echoed memories, Jonathan's first bike ride, Emily's school plays, Thomas's hand in hers at their own wedding. The minister, Reverend Ellis, a kindly man with a white beard and voice like rolling thunder, smiled welcomingly. Bob took her hand as Tom retreated, his palm warm, calloused, familiar. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Ellis began, "we gather today not just to witness a union, but to celebrate a love forged in the fires of time and tempered by grace." The words washed over her, a balm. Readings followed. Clara reciting from Corinthians, a cousin sharing a poem about second blooms. Then vows. Bob first, voice steady but thick with emotion. "Margaret, from the moment you handed me that trowel in the garden and laughed at my muddy knees, I knew you were the light I'd been missing. I promised to stand with you through storms and sunrises, to listen when words fail, to love you not despite your scars, but because of them. In scarcity and plenty, in laughter and tears, you have my heart, today and always." Tears pricked Margaret's eyes. She squeezed his hand, drawing strength. Her turn. "Bob, you saw me when I felt invisible, the widow, the mother, the woman piecing herself back together. You taught me that love isn't a grand gesture, but the quiet choice to stay. I vow to walk beside you, to share your burdens and your joys, to build a home where we both feel whole. With all that I am, I choose you." Rings exchanged, Bob's oak band joined by a simple gold one. Margaret's finger graced with a diamond, modest in size but radiant in meaning. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Ellis intoned, "I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Their kiss was soft, lingering, the world fading to just the two of them. Applause erupted, joyous and full, as they turned to face their loved ones. Petals rained down, laughter mingled with cheers. For one perfect moment, Margaret believed in fairy tales again. But as they processed down the aisle, arm in arm, she couldn't shake the glance toward the third row. Jonathan's table was occupied, but his chair, her son's chair, sat empty. A chill rippled through her joy. Where was he? The cocktail hour unfolded on the terrace overlooking the river, a golden hour haze settling over the valley. Waitstaff circulated with trays of elderflower spritzes and mini quiches, the air alive with chatter and the distant strum of a harpist. Margaret and Bob made the rounds, her hand never leaving his arm, their faces flushed with the thrill of new titles. Husband, wife. "You were incredible up there," Bob murmured, clinking his glass to hers. "Your voice strong as steel." She laughed, a sound light and free. "Flatterer. You made me cry, you know. Good tears, I hope." "The best." They paused to greet the Patels, who pressed a beautifully wrapped box of homemade samosas into her hands. "Blessings on your marriage, Margaret. Bob, you're a lucky man." Old Mr. Hargrove from the firm shuffled over next, his cane tapping rhythmically. "Never thought I'd see the day, Maggie. Thomas would be proud." The words stung sweetly, a bridge between past and present. Margaret nodded, throat tight. "He would." "Thank you, George." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lawn, Clara pulled her aside near a cluster of hydrangeas. "Have you seen Jonathan? His table's set, but he's not mingling. Lauren's holding court with her family, All diamonds and drawls, but your boy. Nothing. Margaret frowned, scanning the crowd. Emily was there at least, her dark hair pinned up, Derek at her side in a too-tight blazer, both nursing drinks by the bar. Emily caught her eye and waved, a tentative smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Margaret waved back, making a mental note to find her later. He's probably off sulking, Margaret said lightly. You know Jonathan hates being upstaged. Clara's brow furrowed. Or nursing a grudge. Lauren's been texting me snide comments about the budget venue. As if you didn't notice her dress cost more than the flowers. Margaret waved it off. Let them. This is our day. But the seed of unease took root. As guests drifted into the ballroom for dinner, Margaret slipped away to check the powder room, hoping to spot Jonathan en route. The hall was quiet, lined with portraits of long-gone magnolias in bloom. A door creaked open ahead, the groom's suite, and she heard voices low and heated. Can't believe she's doing this. That man? Please. Mom's delusional if she thinks he's not after her nest egg. Jonathan's voice, slurred slightly, laced with disdain. Margaret froze, heart hammering. Another voice, Lauren's, sharp as cut glass. I told you, John. We should have talked her out of it months ago. Now look, we've got to sit through this farce smiling like idiots. And Emily's no help, she's too soft. A third voice, Derek's, chuckled. Give it time. Once the honeymoon glow fades and Bob's retirement savings run dry, she'll come crawling. In the meantime, pass the flask. This champagne's weak. Margaret's blood ran cold. She backed away silently, pulse thundering in her ears. They were here, her children, but not for her. For the spectacle. For the pity. For the inevitable fall they predicted. She straightened her shoulders, forcing a smile as she re-entered the terrace. Bob found her immediately, concern etching his brow. Everything all right? Perfect, she lied, linking her arm through his. Let's go in. Dinner's waiting. The ballroom doors swung wide, revealing a scene of opulence. Chandeliers dripping crystal, tables aglow with candlelight, the river visible through arched windows like a living painting. Guests found their seats, programs rustling, silverware chiming. Margaret and Bob took the head table, flanked by Clara and Tom, Reverend Ellis, and Lena the photographer. Seating charts had been a battle, Jonathan insisting on his table near the front, surrounded by Lauren's clan. Richard and Evelyn, the brothers and their trophy wives, a dozen in all, a block of entitlement amid the warmth. Emily and Derek were at a side table with distant cousins, a concession to neutrality. As the first course, chilled cucumber soup with dill, arrived, Margaret scanned the room. Jonathan was there now, sliding into his seat with a glass already in hand, Lauren whispering something that made him smirk. Relief warred with the knot in her stomach. They were here. That was enough. For now. Dinner progressed in waves of flavor and fellowship. The rack of lamb arrived medium rare. Juices pooling on porcelain, accompanied by asparagus spears glossed with lemon butter. Wine flowed, a crisp Chardonnay for the fish course, a bold Cabernet for the meat. Laughter punctuated the clink of forks. Stories of Margaret's legendary potlucks mingled with Bob's tales of botched DIY projects. The quartet played softly, Vivaldi's Four Seasons giving way to contemporary strings. A cover of Ed Sheeran's Perfect, that had several guests swaying in their seats. Margaret caught Emily's eye across the room. Her daughter offered a thumbs up, but her smile seemed forced, Derek's hand heavy on her shoulder. Bob leaned in during the salad course. Your kids, they're watching us. Like we're a show. Margaret followed his gaze. Jonathan was gesturing animatedly, Lauren's family leaning in, their heads together in conspiracy. They're just excited. It's a big day. He squeezed her hand under the table. If you say so. But if anything feels off, you tell me. She nodded, but the words from the hall echoed. Delusional. Nest egg. Farce. Dessert loomed, the apple tart steam rising from lattice crusts dusted with powdered sugar. But first, toasts. The MC, a jovial cousin named Frank, took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a few words from those who know our bride and groom best. Clara first. Clara rose, glass in hand, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. Maggie and I go back 30 years, to a PTA meeting where she saved me from a glue gun disaster. She's the friend who shows up with coffee at dawn and casseroles at midnight. Bob, you walked into her life like a gentle rain after a drought. You two remind us that love isn't about perfection. It's about partnership. To Margaret and Bob, may your days be filled with more gardens than weeds, more laughter than tears. Applause rippled, warm and genuine. Margaret mouthed thank you, her eyes misty. Bob kissed her temple. Frank scanned the room. Next, from the bride's side, Jonathan? The room quieted as Jonathan stood, unfolding a napkin like a script. At 35, he cut an imposing figure. 6'2", broad-shouldered, his dark hair slicked back, suit tailored to perfection. The $4,000 price tag was evident in the sharp lines, the subtle pinstripe. Lauren beamed up at him from her seat, her emerald gown hugging curves accentuated by a necklace of emeralds that matched her eyes. A gift from Richard's latest deal. Jonathan cleared his throat, mic feedback squealing briefly. I'd like to say a few words about my mother. A murmur of anticipation. Margaret smiled encouragingly, Bob's thumb tracing circles on her palm. She's always been the rock of our family, Jonathan began, voice smooth, practiced. Generous to a fault. Sacrificing everything for us kids. Late nights working, holidays alone so we could chase our dreams. She's the definition of selflessness. Nods from the crowd, a few hears from aunts in the back. And today, he continued, his tone shifting, a edge creeping in. She's outdone herself. Look at this place, the flowers, the food, the view. All from her savings, every last dime. For a wedding that's, well, let's call it unconventional. A ripple of confusion. Margaret's smile faltered. Jonathan raised his glass, swaying imperceptibly, the champagne bottle at his table half empty already. To Mom, who after all these years of giving, has finally found someone willing to take it all. Her money, her heart, whatever's on offer. Cheers to second chances, even when they're questionable. Laughter erupted from his table, sharp and mocking. Lauren let it, a braying sound that cut through the room like glass. Richard slapped the table, Evelyn covering her mouth with manicured nails, the brothers hooting. Phones appeared. Mark's capturing video, Todd's angling for a wide shot. Get this, priceless, someone whispered. Margaret's blood turned to ice. The room's energy shifted, conversations dying like snuffed candles. Bob's grip tightened, his jaw set. Jonathan wasn't done. Emboldened by the chuckles, he leaned into the mic. Come on, let's be real. Bob's a great guy, retired carpenter, right? That little bungalow on Elm? The truck that looks like it survived the flood? Admirable. Humble. But Mom, you raised us to aim high. You deserve someone who can match your drive, not ride on it. Someone with a portfolio, not a toolbox. More laughter from the table, Lauren standing now, glass aloft. Exactly. Margaret, honey, he's a freeloader. Plain and simple. You're footing the bill for fairy tales, and we're all just waiting for the call. No offense, but at your age? You could have shopped better. The words landed like slaps. Evelyn chimed in, bracelets jangling. Poor dear. Thomas would roll in his grave. Mark added. My gardener has better suits. Emily's table was silent. She stared at her plate, color draining from her face. Derek smirked, muttering something that made her flinch. Margaret rose slowly, the chair scraping like a thunderclap in the hush. Her hands trembled, but she folded them before her, voice emerging low, controlled. A voice honed from years of diffusing office tempers and teenage tantrums. Jonathan. Lauren. That's enough. He turned, smirk fading slightly. Mom, relax. It's a toast. Lighten up. Lighten up. The words echoed, gaining strength. She stepped from the head table, gown trailing like a banner. The room watched, breath held. You call this a toast? This is cruelty. Disguised as humor, served with champagne you drank from my bar. Lauren rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. Oh please. We're family. We say what everyone thinks. Bob's nice, but he's trash, admit it. You're deluded if you think otherwise. Gasps rippled. Bob stood now, but Margaret waved him back. This was hers. She reached their table, eyes locking on Jonathan's, eyes so like Thomas's, once full of mischief, now clouded with arrogance. Family? Family doesn't record humiliation for likes. Family doesn't mock a man's character because his shoes aren't Italian leather. Family supports Jonathan, not sabotages. He shifted, glass clinking down. It's just banter. You're overreacting. Overreacting. Her voice rose, carrying to every corner. I spent 18 years raising you alone. Worked double so you could have braces, college, that first car. I buried your father while you partied through finals. And today, on my wedding day, you stand here drunk and entitled, calling my husband a freeloader? In front of 400 people who came to celebrate love. The table fell silent. Evelyn's hand froze in mid-gesture. Phones lowered, but not before capturing the pivot. Emily stood abruptly from her table, chair toppling. Mom, stop. This is embarrassing. Embarrassing. Margaret whirled. You sat there, Emily. Silent. While your brother tore apart the man I love. Where's your voice now? Derek pulled her down. Babe, let it go. No. Emily's eyes welled. I didn't mean. But Margaret was done. Fury long-banked roared free. You all, Jonathan, Lauren, Emily, Derek, and your vipers of in-laws, leave. Now. This is my day. My money. My life. And you will not poison it. Jonathan's face purpled. You're kicking us out? Your own kids? Over a joke. Not a joke. A betrayal. She signaled the venue manager, who nodded to security. Two burly men in black polos materializing at the doors. Lauren snatched her clutch, nails like talons. This is insane. Richard, do something. Richard, red-faced, blustered. Young lady, you can't. I can. And I am. Margaret's voice was steel. 5 minutes. Or security escorts you. Chaos erupted at the table. Chairs shoved back, voices overlapping. Evelyn's wail, Mark's curses, Todd's muttered threats. Jonathan grabbed Lauren's arm, storming toward the exit. Emily trailing with Derek, tears streaming. Mom, please. The doors slammed. Silence crashed in, heavy as fog. Then Clara's clap, slow, deliberate. Tom joined, then Reverend Ellis, then a wave from the back. Applause built, not mocking but affirming. A roar for the woman who'd finally said enough. Margaret stood amid it. Chest heaving, tears carving paths through makeup. Bob enveloped her. His embrace a fortress. You were a lioness, he whispered. My lioness. She buried her face in his shoulder, sobs racking. I threw out my children. On my wedding day. You defended our love. That's not throwing out. That's choosing. Guests approached, hugs, murmurs of brave. Strong. Lena captured it all. Her lens compassionate. The band struck up again, a soothing waltz. Dinner resumed, tentative at first, then with renewed vigor. Plates cleared, wine refilled. But the joy was tempered, edged with the rawness of truth. As cake was served, tart slices with vanilla bean ice cream, Bob took the mic, his turn unscripted. The room hushed once more. Folks, he said, voice like gravel wrapped in velvet. Thank you for staying. For witnessing not just joy but grit. What happened? It hurt. Deeply. But it clarified something vital. He turned to Margaret, eyes locking. Maggie, love of my life, there's a truth I've held close. One I wanted you to discover me by, not my ledger. Her breath caught. Bob. He smiled, sad and sweet. I'm not the simple carpenter you thought. 10 years ago, after Sarah's death, I walked away from Ellison Global Properties, the company I built from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire. Real estate, tech parks, resorts. $3.4 billion give or take. Gasps echoed. Chairs scraping as guests leaned forward. I sold the yachts, the penthouse, the fleet of cars. Lived small to find real connection. Not sycophants or suitors eyeing zeros. Someone who'd share a PB&J on a park bench and mean it. Tears glistened in his eyes. That someone was you, Maggie. You brought me soup without asking my net worth. Laughed at my puns without pity. Loved me when I was just Bob. Today those whispers, they don't touch us. Because you chose me blind. And that's richer than any fortune. Margaret's world tilted. $3 billion. He nodded, pulling her close. All yours now if you'll have it. But the real gift? You saw me. The room exploded, cheers, whistles, Clara whooping. Phones flashed, but this time in celebration. Hugs cascaded. Reverend Ellis pumped Bob's hand. Knew there was more to you than hammers. Margaret clung to him, mind reeling. The man she'd cherished for his calluses was a titan. And yet, he was still Bob. Her Bob. The revelation rippled outward like stones in the river. By night's end, as guests danced under chandeliers to a jazzed up at last, whispers had become roars. Did you hear? Ellison Global. That's the guy who built the waterfront. Margaret married a mogul. Laughter mingled with awe, the earlier drama recast as karmic prelude. Bob and Margaret slipped away early, the cake half-eaten, the quartet winding down. In the bridal suite she paced, gown discarded for a silk robe, questions tumbling. Why hide it? All this time. He sat on the settee, tie loosened, vulnerability raw. Sarah's illness. It bankrupted us emotionally, even with the money. Friends vanished when the checks stopped. Family sued for shares. I learned wealth attracts wolves, not partners. So I vanished. Bungalow, truck, garden, tests for authenticity. And I passed. Her voice cracked, half laugh, half sob. With flying colors. He rose, cupping her face. You, Maggie Harper, are priceless. They made love that night, slow and reverent, the rivers murmur their lullaby. Dawn found them tangled in sheets, the world remade. But outside the storm brewed. Jonathan, in the hotel bar with his entourage, had caught wind via a tipsy guest's text. Billionaire? That bum. Rage boiled into denial, then calculation. Lauren's eyes gleamed. We fixed this. Apologize. Leverage the connection. Emily, in her room, wept alone, Derek snoring beside her. What have we done? News broke by morning. Local feeds buzzing, national outlets sniffing. Riverton wedding shocker. Widow weds secret billionaire amid family feud. Clips circulated. Jonathan's toast, Margaret's stand, Bob's reveal. Margaret and Bob departed for Tuscany at noon. A private jet waiting, Bob's unmentioned till now. The villa, perched on olive groves overlooking vineyards, was paradise. Terracotta tiles, infinity pool merging with horizon, chef-prepared meals of truffle pasta and Chianti sunsets. They wandered cypress lanes, hands clasped, but Margaret's phone, left on silent, piled with notifications. She ignored them, focusing on Bob's stories. Bootstrapping Ellison from 80s flips, Sarah's laugh at board meetings, the ache of her chemo days. Money built walls, he said one evening, stars wheeling above. You tore them down. In Riverton, fallout accelerated. Jonathan's firm, leveraged on speculative deals, teetered. A client pulled a $2 million contract, citing personal drama. Lauren's social circle ghosted, whispers of poor taste at the wedding. Emily's freelance gigs dried. Clients wary of scandal. Derek's startup imploded. Investors fleeing the tabloid taint. Messages flooded. Apologies laced with pleas. Jonathan. Mom, huge misunderstanding. Bob's incredible. Let's talk business, synergies. Lauren. Family first. Grandkids miss you. Emily. I'm sorry. So sorry. Can we start over? Margaret read them poolside, Bob's arm around her. They sound desperate. They are, he said gently. But desperation isn't remorse. She deleted the threads, choosing sun-warmed stone over shadows. Honeymoon's end brought reality's bite. Back in Riverton, Bob's world unfolded gradually. No mansions thrust upon her. He respected her pace. They stayed in her bungalow, now mortgage-free, a quiet gift, while he introduced Ellison's empire in digestible slices. First meeting. His lawyer Harlan, a silver fox in pinstripes, over coffee at a diner. Mrs. Ellison, Margaret, Bob's added you to everything. Trusts, accounts, boards. Sign here for the trusts for the grandkids. $5 million each, vested at 30, with stipends for education. Margaret's coffee grew cold. Grandkids? After? Bob's choice, Harlan said. Innocents deserve chances. But conditions. Parental therapy. Financial audits. No blank checks. She signed, heart-twisting. The children she defended for years now gated by her husband's wisdom. Next, the office. A sleek tower downtown, glass walls framing the river. Employees greeted Bob with respect. Handshakes, not bows. Margaret toured boardrooms, saw blueprints for eco-resorts, met architects dreaming green. It's not just profit, Bob explained. Sarah wanted legacy, sustainable spaces, community hubs. Lunch at the executive cafe. Salmon salads, views endless. This is yours now, he said. Or not. Philanthropy wing? Travel? Stay home with books? Your call. Overwhelmed, she opted small. A foundation for widowed mothers, seeded with $10 million. Like what I needed, she murmured. Counseling, job training, no judgment loans. Bob beamed. That's my girl. Home life blended old and new. Bob's truck stayed. A hybrid SUV appeared for errands, dinners, her apple pie, his grilled trout. Nights, walks by the river, hands swinging, dreams shared. But the messages persisted, escalating. Jonathan's calls went to voicemail. Mom, Lauren left. Said the scandal ruined her. I need advice. Your new connections. Emily's texts. Derek's furious. Lost funding. We're losing the condo. Please. Guilt nod. Late one night, Margaret confessed over tea. They're drowning, Bob. My babies. He nodded. Drownings happen when you ignore lifelines. They mocked us, Maggie. Recorded it. But if you want to throw a rope. Not yet, she decided. They need to swim first. For months post-wedding, Riverton's gossip mills churned. Jonathan's foreclosure hit the papers. Local developer in distress after wedding fallout. Photos showed movers hauling Louis Vuitton trunks from the Colonial. Lauren's Porsche repossessed. She filed papers days later, citing irreconcilable differences. Fleeing to her parents' McMansion with the twins, Sophie and Liam, 6 and 4, their cherubic faces masking the chaos. Jonathan crashed with Mark, sleeping on a futon amid unpacked boxes. His firm folded, partners bailed, loans called. Evenings blurred into bars, flask in pocket, resentment festering. If she'd listened, he'd slur to anyone listening. None of this. Emily's spiral was quieter but no less brutal. Derek's bankruptcy forced a sale. Condo gone, SUV auctioned. He blamed her. Your family's curse. She waitressed at a diner, feet aching in sensible shoes, tip stuffed in a jar labeled rent. Freelance dried. Clients whispered drama queen. Alone in a studio apartment, microwave dinners her norm, she scrolled wedding clips nightly, replaying her silence. Tasha, Lauren's sister, tried media plays. Tabloids offered for exposé. But Bob's PR quashed it. Ethics clauses, Harlan explained. Plus, the videos speak. The videos. Jonathan's sneer, Lauren's barb, Margaret's fire. Viral now, millions of views. Comments a deluge. Queen behavior. Karma's a bride. Sympathy tilted to Margaret. Donors flooding her foundation. She and Bob attended a gala. First public outing. Arms linked, flashes popping. Whispers followed. That's her, the hidden heiress. Bob charmed donors. Margaret pitched her cause, securing $2 million in pledges. Power hummed. Unfamiliar but heady. Home vulnerability lingered. Do you miss the simple Bob? She asked one night, rain pattering windows. Simple Bob was real. This is just tools. You wield them better than I ever did. 6 months in, Margaret relented. To separate meetings, neutral ground. First, Jonathan at the cafe by the river. Autumn leaves swirling. He arrived early, jeans faded, flannel shirt. Echo of Bob's style, perhaps. Thinner, shadows under eyes, no Rolex glinting. Mom. His voice broke on the word. Chair scraping as he stood for a hug, she sidestepped. Thank you for coming. She sat, coffee black, hands folded. Say what you need to. He exhaled, envelope sliding across scarred oak. $8,000. Overtime from site work. I'm laboring now, not managing. First repayment on the $25,000 I borrowed over years. She blinked, fingers tracing the paper. You worked. Shoveling footings, 10-hour days. Breaks my nails, blisters my hands. Teaches humility. Tears welled. I was poison, Mom. Lauren's ambition infected me. Deals over dinners, status over soul. At the wedding, drunk on insecurity, I lashed out. Feared losing you to someone better. But Bob. He's the better man. I see it now. Words poured. Therapy sessions unpacking entitlement. AA meetings for the bottle. Custody battles for Sophie and Liam. Lauren suing for full, says I'm unstable. But I'm fighting weekends with them, story time, no gifts, just time. Margaret listened, heart fracturing. Why now? Not apology texts, but this. Pride. Thought money fixed it. When it vanished, rock bottom. Your stand? Bravest thing I ever saw. Wish I'd been half that strong. She pocketed the envelope. Therapy. Ongoing. And family sessions with me, Bob. No shortcuts. He nodded, fervent. Anything. Emily's meeting a week later at the same cafe. Rain-slick streets. She dashed in, hair plastered, coat threadbare. 32, once vibrant, now hollow-cheeked. Mom, she sobbed, collapsing into embrace. They talked hours. Emily's cowardice. Fearing Derek's temper, Jonathan's shadow. I froze. Laughed to fit in. Hated myself after. Derek's abuse, verbal, financial. Exposed in divorce papers. She waitressed but enrolled in nursing prereqs. Always wanted to help like you. Envelope. $4,200. Tips, side gigs. Toward the wedding gift, I never thanked you for. Tears mingled with rain on the window. Forgive me. Not yet, Margaret echoed. Earn it. Therapy. Independence. Show me the girl who dreamed big. Not the one who dimmed. Rebuilding was glacial. Monthly sessions. Jonathan fidgeting, Emily tearful, Margaret firm, Bob a steady presence. His insights gold drawn from boardrooms and heartaches. Forgiveness isn't erasure, he'd say. It's invitation to better. Jonathan's assent. Promoted to site supervisor, calluses his badge. Sophie and Liam visited. Awkward at first, then giggles over Bob's birdhouses. Grandma's friend makes toys. Liam beamed. Emily thrived in classes, waitressing less, confidence blooming. Derek faded. Alimony checks her buffer. She designed logos for Margaret's foundation. Freehand sketches turning digital magic. Grandkids bridged gaps. Holidays tentative then warm. Thanksgiving at the bungalow, pie shared, stories swapped. No billions flashed. Bob's truck ferried all. Publicly, Margaret stepped up. Foundation galas, speeches on resilience. Wealth isn't inheritance, she'd say. It's the courage to claim your worth. Bob watched, proud. You're the heiress now, not hidden. A year on, Riverton bloomed anew. Jonathan's firm reborn small. Ethical flips, community focus. Engaged to a teacher, humble ring. The foundation flourished. Homes built, women empowered. Margaret keynote TEDx. The crash that saved me. Privately, scars lingered, nights of doubt, old wounds flaring. But love anchored. Bob's notes in lunch bags, walks where hands fit perfect. 18 months after the crash, their garden, expanded, tomatoes thriving, hosted renewal. 30 souls. Clara, Tom, Harlan, kids, grandkids. Lanterns glowed, quartets strummed. Jonathan toasted. Mom taught value beyond vaults. Bob, your family, the best kind. Emily. From silence to song. Thank you for the chorus. Vows renewed. In knowledge now, I choose you still. Under sunset, Margaret whispered. No regrets. None. You. She smiled. This us them all. The crash? Best collision ever. Dancing under stars, family whole, the river sang on. Not perfect but real. And that was wealth untold. Epilogue. Ripples eternal. 2 years later, the garden festival where it began. Margaret and Bob, hands soil-streaked, laughed as Jonathan's twins chased fireflies. Emily, scrubs fresh from shift, sketched the scene. A new plaque by the gate. Harper Ellison plot. Where roots deepen, blooms surprise. Life like vines twisted but grew. And in the twist, grace.